We got old JP here, former co-host of Off the Bench. He is back today, helping us out. We called in the backups today, and JP fortunately answered the phone. Not that y'all are backups, but y'all are contribute to the show and a great part. JP, how's it going today? JP of Rightside Media now, formerly of Rightside Radio.
It's great to be on the show. I don't think it's going to the backups. I think you're just going to the bullpen.
It's the bullpen.
That's the better way to put it.
That's a lot better way to put it. That's a lot better way to put it. Was not trying to call y'all the backups, although JP did leave me on the show.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry. But hey, you've been doing great, doing your thing. I've been keeping up. So I don't think you needed me. I think you're good.
That's okay. You've held up nice for yourself. How is Rightside Media going over there?
It's going great. A lot of great things happening. The runoffs are now over, so the drama's over. Taking a breather. Gonna get back to more national issues, I guess. We got so sucked into the state level stuff, which is so important. But it's a crazy time, the primaries and the runoffs. So I think we're glad to take a breather with all that being over.
So, JP, the thing that mixes our world, in a sense, is when Congress is getting involved in college football. And I'm openly against it. I do not want any government body within college football because I think it throws a wrench in everything. Me and Damien were just talking about that. But the Protect College Sports Act has now passed through Congress. Now, the bill has a lot of things in it, from NIL to transfers to eligibility to enforcement, athletic protections, and college sports governance. So what's your favorite parts of this bill? Is this bill good for college football?
I would say, honestly, from what I've looked at, the positives outweigh the negatives so far. I think my favorite part of the bill would be, in general, yeah. I think the best part of the bill, in my opinion, is making a law that pro athletes across the board cannot come back to play college sports, because that was one of the big problems we saw in basketball with the Charles Bediako incident. Was the most popular one. But there were several others of guys from overseas, but also going to the NBA, G League, and coming back and playing. And there was no objective law on the books. The NCAA can make its ruling, but then you just take it to a homer judge in your college town, and they can rule in favor. And the NCAA's got no way to enact their law. So I think that one was probably my favorite. I'll be honest. I think the one that I didn't like the best was, and we can talk about this, the keeping college coaches from leaving mid-season, because I think on paper that's a good idea, but I think the only way to fix that is to change the college football schedule, because with the Lane Kiffin incident, for example, which I think Ted Cruz even called it the Kiffin provision, he had to leave mid-season to go to LSU in the playoffs, because that's how the schedule was, with the transfer portal opening, I think, like the first week of December, while the college football playoffs were still going on. So if you're Lane Kiffin and you're going to take the LSU job, you got to do what's best for your program at LSU to go ahead and go and start recruiting. I mean, it's awful. It's unfortunate, but that's just kind of how the business is. And I don't think you can expect schools to not go and try and get a coach because, they're still in the playoffs. They still got a season going on. Like, if you're LSU, to heck with Ole Miss's playoffs, I'm going to get my coach and we're going to start building our program. So I think that you need to change the schedule. I don't like that becoming a federal law, because then that just makes things even messier. So I'd say that's probably the pro players being illegal to come back is probably my favorite. And I think probably my least favorite would be the Lane Kiffin provision, I guess you can call it.
So we're going to unpack a lot of that here. So first off, I want to discuss with you the Lane Kiffin rule, because honestly, this is a bill on paper. You're right. It helps a lot of things. It looks good on paper. Now, could it get issues down the line? We've always seen mid-year firings. It has happened a lot. Now, it's got more popularized over the last 10, 15 years of firing a coach midseason or a coach leaving midseason. Now, the only issue I see with it, the only coach we actually had the issue with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, and it's how it was handled. It was actually handled on the athletic director side worse off for LSU or for Ole Miss, because Ole Miss's athletic director told Kiffin he had an either or. You can stay and coach, but you cannot. You can stay and coach, but if you're leaving to go to LSU next season, we want you gone. That's the case. Now, Summerall, we didn't have that issue. The head coach for North Texas, he's now at Oklahoma State. I'm going to forget that name too. We didn't have that issue with him. So I don't know if this issue is necessarily a direct need in college football, like we were seeing with the NIL, like we were seeing with the transfer portal. I don't know if it's a direct need like those. I think that this was just an issue that was handled poorly by Ole Miss.
Yeah, and see, I think that's where I would disagree. I think if you're Ole Miss and you are a Power 5 or Power 4, I guess, SEC program, and you got LSU, who's a rival, not just a SEC rival, but just a rival in general. I'm not letting him hang around and letting him, recruit players. I'm not letting him have any opportunity. And first of all, I think it may have been handled a little bit differently if it wasn't Lane Kiffin of all people. Lane Kiffin is not the cleanest and most honorable guy in terms of, he's going to do whatever he needs to do to win and do what's best for Lane Kiffin. And if that's, hey, sweet talking some of your Ole Miss players to come to LSU next year or to do whatever nonsense Lane Kiffin needs to do, I think the safest bet for Ole Miss was just go now, just leave. We got Pete Golding. We'll figure it out. And I do think, you mentioned Summerall and others. I do think this won't really be an issue for a lot of schools, like with coaches taking a step up, like going from a Tulane to a Florida, or going from, wherever, from a lower level to a higher level. I think a lot of those schools will let them hang around. But I think the problem is whenever you get the Lane Kiffin situations of sort of the lateral moves, and even the lateral moves within conference, and add the Lane Kiffin factor on top, I think that's what made that one such a disaster. So I do agree. I think it won't be as big of a problem as often, but there's still that possibility until you change the schedule and move the transfer portal window from after the college football playoffs, then we're going to have another Lane Kiffin situation eventually. Now, it may not be as dramatic, like I said, because when Lane Kiffin's involved, it's always like that. But I think trying to make it a federal law is like putting a Band-Aid over like a gunshot wound or something. Like it's not really fixing the root of the problem, which I think the schedule needs to be changed.
Right. And I'm with you. Schedule does have issues. We're going to get to that a little bit later. But you had also mentioned the fact that you thought a big part of this bill was pro players coming back and playing, any collegiate sport. So my only thing with that, is it going to combat current players? And this one directly more impacts college basketball playing college sports, because we saw the Charles DiBiaco situation that was handled. Now, firstly, as an Alabama fan, where do you stand on that? Because a lot of Alabama fans liked that Bidiaco was in town. They didn't really care.
I on paper, I did not like that was a thing in college sports, but to be honest, I thought we were just doing what everybody else was doing, honestly. I felt like the precedent was set by other judges.
Strategic advantage.
Yes. Okay. I didn't like that that's the game, but I felt like we were playing it just like everybody else was.
So because in college basketball, my allegiance lies with the Kentucky Wildcats, and they had been recruiting Dink Pate to come play for Kentucky. Now, Dink Pate at the time was in the G League. I think he eventually settled with another college team, but he is still going to play college basketball next year. Yet he played in the G League. So is that rule going to come into effect with Dink Pate there?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be retroactive. I think maybe the NCAA brings those lawsuits back up or file suit somehow to get a judge to revoke their eligibility if it was granted by a judge in the first place. I would assume that on paper originally it won't be retroactive, but I wouldn't be surprised if the NCAA files suit or takes action legally to revoke their eligibility. That's what I would guess.
So, because he is currently listed on the Providence Friars, he has recently played in the G League for Winchester Knicks and the Mexico City Capitanes. So he was for his college. He was a G League Ignite guy. So he went on to play pro ball, I guess, with the G League Ignite. So he is technically playing college basketball. So, but you were going down the route of the schedules, right? The schedule in college football is completely messed up. It needs to be backed up a week, okay? And then you add on top, I say backed up a week. It needs to be moved. We need to start the week one. We need to start the year 1 week sooner.
Yep.
The biggest issue, though, that a lot of people haven't even taken into effect is once we implement the larger playoff, whether we're going to 16 or 24, however we do that, the schedule again is going to be messed up by that. Is it not?
Right, probably so, because I mean, the larger you make the playoff, the earlier you have to start. Whatever you got to do, you having the transfer portal window in the middle of college football playoffs is just insane to me. I mean, either you make it, I don't know, push it back as far as possible, or just eliminate two and make one massive transfer portal window. If you're having the transfer portal window take place like either right before the playoffs or during the playoffs, that is what is going to cause such a problem. And that's what causes coaches have to leave and go to other schools to start recruiting. So I agree, making the playoffs bigger. Obviously, you start earlier, but I honestly just make one window if you have to, and put it right after the college football playoffs. Make it a longer window if you need be. I think that if you got to do that, then do that. Honestly, I think it's that important to keep all the chaos from happening like it has.
So does college football just I would say show the finger to the NFL and not be scared of them, and just combat that you are equal to them, and say we're going to put games on NFL days. Just to you set a precedent right then and there, because then you're going through the process of we're no longer scared to just play the games because we have so much to look out for. They already have to look out for the Army-Navy game. They have set in place that they're keeping it on the week it is currently on, while I had said it needs to go to week 0. That's not happening. They have other ideas for week 0, obviously. Week 0 is going to be the new week 1. They have to worry about the lesser bowl games, which another thing this bill doesn't really help is the lesser bowl games. I don't think that the lesser bowl games are getting helped in this situation. I think there literally needs to be a direct incentive for these schools to play these lesser bowl games. And the incentive needs to be, we're going to help you move up to where you are a better program next year than you were this year. Maybe it's a financial incentive.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think the lower bowls not being played is not good for college football. And honestly, I would even add another layer to it of a punishment if you decide not to play in a bowl. I think if you we can make the penalties more extreme by levels. You know, the higher up a school is, the higher the penalty if they decide to skip out, kind of like what Notre Dame did, and what Florida State did famously when they were left out. I think that needs to happen. But yeah, I think incentives. I think schools should be rewarded for playing lower bowl games, especially when they don't have to, because I mean, if you're a school and you're opting out, I guarantee you there's a lot of other schools that could use the money and the exposure and just another game to play. Then, I mean, you're giving them that opportunity. So I think that's not a bad idea to address that in the bill. Honestly, I agree.
So I'm going to scare you with this wording right here because it's very similar to what's going on in the real world right now, not just college football. The memorandum of understanding toward Notre Dame,
Yeah.
okay? Is there a way we can get rid of that in college football? Is there a way that we can literally repeal that memorandum of understanding to where Notre Dame doesn't have that ability? Because right now, I have a financial incentive to FanDuel, right? Right now, I can directly say, let's go, hey, JP, why don't you post post a bet on Notre Dame making the playoff next year. Now, we're in Alabama. You must do this in an eligible state, 21 years or older.
Yeah.
So right now, would you go post a bet for Notre Dame to go make the college football playoff next year? And would you have 100% confidence?
Absolutely, yeah. They've pretty much been guaranteed a free spot every year with how it's set up right now.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think 100%. Listen, I think Notre Dame, that whole ordeal, they need to just play like everybody else, to be honest with you, because they need to join a conference, I think. And if they're not going to join a conference, then make it to where they have to scrap and they got to get in as well as everybody else, and they don't just kind of have a free ride or a free spot every year. But I really do think, and it's about time they need to join a conference. And I understand that with their TV deal that's not advantageous for them, but you know, tough nuts, honestly. I think that's what needs to happen in college football. You know, go get a TV deal, and I know you're going to lose money with what you got with NBC, but I just think it's overdue for Notre Dame to join the conference like everybody else.
So last question, then we're going to move on from the Protect College Sports Act, and we're going to move towards Alabama recruiting for the next year in the next segment. So does this bill, in your opinion, is it more directed toward the Big Ten and the SEC rather than the broader landscape, the NCAA in the group of six?
I think so. And honestly, I've been doing some research. I've been trying to figure out what exactly. I know there's like a pool for schools to collect and to negotiate TV deals, and I guess that will put the SEC and the Big Ten in a lesser position. But ultimately, yeah, I think this bill was geared towards the mega conferences and trying to prevent mega conferences, which I'm totally for. I'm totally for preventing mega conferences. I think it was directed towards those bigger schools so that there's not a monopoly. There's not where the whole NCAA doesn't just ride by what the Power Four wants to do and whatever is best for them and whatever makes them the most money. I think 100%, and I'm for it, to be honest, as an SEC guy.
So the part two in that question, and I'm an SEC homer too. I got choked up in the middle of that question, so there's going to be a part two. The real question of that was it's combating that Big Ten and SEC, the problems that we're seeing from a larger landscape, because those are the two conferences that are really projecting what we're seeing from them. They're directing this bill towards the issues in the Big Ten and the Big 12. They don't really have an eye on the issues that are happening at the lower level of the sport and group of six. They're not looking at that directly. I think there's more problems down there that need to be fixed, like at their 2-3 year mark, when you finally have a good team and you have built these guys up from the ground, these 2 and 3 stars that have came to your school. Well, they're ready to move on now. They're ready to go to a larger conference and compete at a higher level. That is an issue for the group of six. You're going to see it very hard. You're going to keep seeing that low-level playoff team within college football because you're going to see within the college football playoff, you're going to see that lower-level group of 6 team because they cannot fix the issues by themselves. That issue is not being projected on a national landscape of once their players get too good for those teams, they move on. They don't have a chance to retain them in the transfer portal because they're ready to go to the Alabamas and Georgias of the world. My problem with this bill is I don't think it combats that.
Yeah. And, I think if we want to add a leg of something that I think needs to be done to help that is just get rid of collectives altogether. I think collectives need to be deemed illegal federally. I think it's just pay for play. It is not NIL. I think now that collective bargaining and the players making money directly from the schools and that shared revenue, that is what NIL was supposed to be. But if you get these massive, massive, massive donor pools, in big states like Texas, California, and they can go and they can just buy a guy from Tulane or a guy from, Louisiana Tech or whatever, then heck yeah, the kid's going to come because why would he stay at Louisiana Tech or wherever? He can go make a bag at LSU or Ole Miss or whatever. I think, honestly, I wish this bill would have added, and you know what, just make the banning collectives just its own bill. Like, it doesn't even have to be on this one. It just needs to be its own thing. I think that would solve so many problems in college football, and I think it would solve that problem you were talking about bigly as well.
So this question's a two-parter because I think we kind of have the same opinions in the NIL. I think it should never go through the schools. I think the collective should be cut out of the middleman situation. It go from directly to the car dealership down the road to the player. The business to the player. It never should be to where your NIL is connected to the school because then you don't have the issues of suing back and forth. We never have the issues of suing back and forth if that's the case. If you won't have the player or the school, the university suing a player because their NIL deal is broken, I'd never believe it should be that case. I think it should be directed at the larger company paying the college athlete rather than that. I forget the two-part of this question, so go ahead and answer that.
I can see what you're saying. I think ultimately the problem that we need to address, whatever it is just the pay for play. So even if it's not coming through the school and it's coming through like the car dealership, like you said, there's got to be guardrails because when it's not and it's the private sector, it's open season, wild, wild west. So I think if you did it through the schools, that at least would make it safer that way, I guess, and make it more tame. But even if we're not doing it through the schools, and you know what, fine, we can have collectives, but there needs to be a lot of federal guardrails and a lot of federal rules. Maybe there's max amounts of how much a collective can offer, or max amounts a collective can even put together, as a whole. But whatever the current status quo of collectives in the wild, wild west, that just needs to be addressed somehow, whether it's just, hey, get rid of them, or, okay, you can have them, but here's some big, big red lines, some guardrails, so y'all can't just keep doing what you're doing, what it is right.
JP, former co-host of the Off the Bench College Football Show, now with Rightside Media. So real quickly, JP, I know you got a hard out here at 10:30. The 2027 recruiting class for Alabama is extremely ranked low. So number 71st nationally, you have 8 hard commits. There's a lot of quality in this class. People around the country and in Alabama are worried about the quantity in this class with only 8 people in it. How do you think of this? Do you think this is a problem, or do you think this is an unfair judge to how Nick Saban used to do this? Especially with the amount of seniors that are on the roster, there's very few when that class is coming in. So it also leaves the door open for a lot of transfer portal recruits.
Yeah, I think it may be a little too early to panic, but I do think it is a bit of a problem. I'm not sure if Alabama right now in the current status quo is able to compete financially with the other NIL collectives in the nation. So I wouldn't sound the alarm. With Elijah Haven, like you said, is a big stud coming in, and I know there's a few other good guys. So I wouldn't panic yet, but I do think it may be a sign of a bit of a larger problem coming if Alabama is going to be able to compete financially with the big other all collectives in Texas and all the others. So I wouldn't panic yet, but I do think it's not a good sign.
So real quickly, we got 30 seconds here. Brendan Sorsby, is it good he left? How bad was it what he did? Did he break the golden rule? What, in your opinion, was Brendan Sorsby after this whole debacle?
He absolutely should not be allowed to play, and I think that's just indicative of how little power the NCAA has over everything, and how there needs to be federal laws in place to give the NCAA more power to keep people like Brendan Sorsby from playing.